Welcome to the groundbreaking news program that delves into the heart of Mormonism, your weekly window into the unique intersection of news, history, and culture that resonates with the tapestry of Mormonism. So whether you're tuning in from the heart of Utah or joining us from around the world, your favorite news program starts now, where news meets insight and the stories of our faith unfold.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of the Mormon Newscast. I am joined by my esteemed colleagues. And when I say esteemed, that pipe certainly fits the bill. Mr. Radio Free Mormon, how are you tonight?
I'm just great. Thank you very much for asking, Bill.
Excellent. And Rebecca Biblioteca, how's your evening going?
I feel like I need an accessory. If he's going to have a pipe, I'm going to have to come out, maybe a very long cigarette holder. I'll bring it next time.
Look on top of your head.
That is my prop. You're right. But I'm not chewing on it.
And I'll just
That's your decision.
I'll just stick with the bad hair for the day, and that'll be mine. So
you look great. It's Halloween, and everybody loves Herman Munster.
And that's what I'm going for. So good evening to both of you. Good evening to our audience. Here we go. Episode of the Mormon Newscast. It is October 28th, 2024. And I will put up on the screen our top stories for the night. So we're going to start off with Radio Free Mormon talking to us about what's been going on recently with politician Mike Lee and freedom of the press. Then we've got Rebecca Biblioteca will run us through Book of Mormon video series that has finally come to an end, and we'll talk about that. And then I'll share a story about BYU's multi-million-dollar man, AJ Dibansa. And then we'll return back to Rebecca for some temple dedication and temple on hold news. And Rebecca will finish the night giving us an entertaining story from Mormon-themed Halloween costumes. So RFM, with that, you have control of the screen.
Of the guy.
Take us through it.
All right, great. Well, there's been a lot of hubbub about something that Mike Lee had said about the Daily Universe and about a story that they had written. And I had heard about it, but I decided I needed to dig into it if I was going to cover this story tonight. And what I wanted to do very first was to look at the story that all this, it's causing all this controversy. It was in the Daily Universe. The title was Utah Women Rally for Reproductive Rights, Voter Action. It's by Dagan Bius, October 17th, 2024. Now, I have highlighted in yellow the phrase reproductive rights. It's not highlighted in the original. I highlight it for a reason, and we'll see what that reason is later on. And I highlight it throughout the article as well. Green Wave Utah hosted a rally on Utah's Capitol Hill on October 12th, aiming to empower women to vote and stand for their rights to reproductive care. On the hot Saturday afternoon, taiko drums rang across the south side of Capitol Hill and welcomed attendees to hear from local politicians and advocates. Members of the community showed their support for women's reproductive rights in the state of Utah. Now, if you're keeping track, that's 3 times this expression has been mentioned, including in the headline, and not being quoting anybody else. It's not a quote from anybody else. This is put in there by the journalist and published by the Daily Universe. I'm bringing that up because eventually, I find out that that's what the controversy is about. Darlene McDonald, author, Democratic National Committee woman, and social justice advocate, spoke about the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, stating that this is not just an issue of the right to abortion. Here's a quote from McDonald. When you start chipping away at the 14th Amendment, when you start chipping away at the rights of citizenship, it gets a little bit easier to chip away at it, because if you gave them the right to chip away the rights to reproductive health care, now there's the expression again, but it's in a quote, you start chipping away the rights of citizenship that was guaranteed under the 14th Amendment, not just for women, but for everyone, McDonald said. BYU alum and president of Young Democrats of Utah, Emma Fetzer, encouraged women to unite when their rights are under attack. Fetzer asked attendees to talk to at least 3 people today and ask them if they have a plan to vote and to share their reason to vote. Once again, this is the article from the Daily Universe, published October 12th, 2024. The rally concluded with remarks from Carolyn Gleich, the Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate in the Utah 2024 race, against Republican nominee Representative John Curtis. In her speech, she cited her motivation for running for office as the change she wanted to see. Our current leaders have failed us, Gleich said, and it might be Gleich, by the way. They are taking our state and our country in the wrong direction, and we can't keep sending the same kind of political leaders if we want a different outcome. It's up to us now to be the leaders that we want to see. Throughout her address, and this is coming to the close, it's not that long an article. Throughout her address, inspired by Democrat presidential nominee and Vice President Kamala Harris, Gleich led the group in chanting, "We're not going back," to honor the generations of women who battled for the rights they now enjoy. Quote from Gleich, "We need more women in the rooms where these decisions are made, and there is ample research that shows that when women lead, everybody benefits. We will not tolerate going backwards." And here's the conclusion of the article. Stephanie McKinnon, founder of Green Wave Utah, a recently founded organization founded, I think that's founder or founded, some form of the word in one sentence. It's just a university newspaper. Once again, Stephanie McKinnon, founder of Green Wave Utah, a recently founded organization founded by local Utahns, inspired by representatives to get involved and to take action, standing for women's reproductive rights. Okay, there's another time, right? I think that's the fourth time that phrase is used when it's not quoting anybody. Was pleased with how the rally turned out and encouraged anyone looking to get involved to come to the Women's March on November 2nd at Washington Square in Salt Lake City. Final paragraph, a quote from McKinnon. "Everyone's voice is important and we want everyone heard," McKinnon said. "It's not just about one group or one issue. It's about everyone being able to be represented and heard." And that's just what I think was conveyed here today. Okay, so there's the article, The Shot Heard Around the World. And I read through it and I was kind of nonplussed as to what all the controversy was about, from what seems to be a rather straightforward reporting article about something that had happened at the state capitol on the steps as part of a rally. But others disagreed. Senator Mike Lee demands BYU remove article from student newspaper website. This is from October 24th, 2024. KUTV, Matthew Jacobson reporting. Lee, that's Senator Mike Lee, made the demand in a repost from an account claiming an October 17th article posted in the Daily Universe that covered a reproductive care and women's rights rally at the Utah State Capitol 5 days prior was condoning grave sin. Doesn't say where that's being quoted from, when we're left to assume it's from the post by Mike Lee, using assets of the private university's owner, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So the assets, I guess, being the school newspaper. Mike Lee's message in the repost on Wednesday, BYU, take down this article, came a day after he accepted accolades on his official Congressional X account from a group naming him as one of 5 senators who have worked tirelessly to protect and ensure our First Amendment rights and who have tirelessly fought the censorship regime. Can you say irony? I knew you could. The article in question was a report on what the speakers said during the public rally in Salt Lake City. Yes, we know that because we just read it, which discussed reproductive rights and focused on encouraging women to vote and concluded with a quote from one of the organizers. The article was a straightforward report on the rally and didn't delve into differing points of view. Mike Lee's post did not specify. This was the second big shock I had. First, that there was so much controversy about what seemed a rather simple article. The second thing is that Mike Lee did not specify the reason or reasons that he believed the article should be removed. Strikes me as strange. He just says, take it down. KUTV 2 News' Brian Mullehy reached out to both Mike Lee and BYU, submitting questions to both. Mullehy submitted these questions on Thursday morning. Questions for Senator Mike Lee. Why should BYU take the article down? Second question, why do I even have to ask this question? Why didn't you say it in the first place? Actually, that would be my second question. Their second question is, why shouldn't BYU's newspaper cover topics and issues that both support and challenge positions of the university and its sponsoring organization? Question 4, in calling for the paper to remove the story, are you trying to limit free speech? Yes. Instead of removal, why didn't you suggest the universe and or university provide context for the report, or seek to balance it by telling the pro-life side? You mean like someone who believes in the First Amendment would do? Well, we don't know the answers to those questions because Mike Lee has declined to answer them. Questions for BYU. They actually got a response from BYU. That's the third surprise. Questions for BYU. Will the article on the pro-choice rally be taken down as called for by Senator Lee? Why or why not? Does the university, by the way, at that very top, it does appear, and I want to thank Rebecca for pointing this out to me, and we'll get to it in a second, that BYU and the journalism school have apparently declined to take down the article. And I accessed that article this morning. So as late as this morning, it was still up, and I think it's probably still up now, that they have declined to take it down in response to Senator Mike Lee's request. Does the university believe Mike Lee's posts amounts to an effort to limit free speech? Are there topics that are off limits for coverage by the paper? Should there be? Must its coverage affirm the university and sponsoring organizations' positions? Was the Daily Universe article balanced? Should it be modified in any way? If so, why and how? Not bad questions. BYU responded and answered the questions. Lee had yet to respond as of the update day and time on this report. And I think that's true. As of now, I was looking to see if I could find anything right before the show. I haven't seen any kind of response from Mike Lee. If anybody out there knows of any, please let us know in the live chat. That'd be really helpful. I wasn't able to find any. Church leadership has been clear on its stance against abortion, as well as its differing stance on birth control in general. Decisions about birth control and the consequences of those decisions rest solely with each married couple. According to the church's manual, elective abortion as a method of birth control, however, is contrary to the commandments of God. Despite church direction leaving family planning to families, and despite the event being held at the Utah State Capitol building, there was a swift social media backlash from anti-abortion advocates who stated the BYU student shouldn't have covered it at all. And I'm guessing that's the person whose name we read, who wrote the article. With Mike Lee's being one of the latest and more prominent voices in that group. So he's not the only one saying that. Lots of people are saying that apparently down there in sunny Provo. The Daily Universe article remained in place as of the most recent update time of this report. And then the following day, that article was the 24th of October. Following day, October 25th, KUTV, Brian Malahy, they basically repeated the article, but they got an attorney who works in media, First Amendment issues to weigh in. And this is what this attorney named Jeff Hunt said, noting that BYU is a private university. He says it's not a First Amendment violation for Senator Lee to weigh in that way, but it certainly runs contrary to the free speech theory and concepts in this country. I would agree with him on his sentiments there, both the first and the second. Hunt also said Lee certainly is entitled to his opinion, adding faculty advisors for the BYU Daily Universe do an excellent job covering controversial subjects. KUTV News asked for an interview with Mike Lee on Thursday and sent questions to his office, including, was his post an attempt to limit free speech? Why shouldn't BYU's newspaper cover topics and issues that both support and challenge positions of the university? Lee's office did not return requests for comment as of the published time of this report. Okay. And then we have a little bit less than a minute of some video dealing with this issue. Sometimes it's interesting to see what other people have to say in addition to just hearing me report on it.
The story at BYU raises questions over journalistic inquiry, free speech, adherence to faith, and Senator Lee's urging to his alma mater.
I can't imagine possibly having a baby inside of me and wanting to do away with that.
BYU senior Brenna Bolar, who opposes abortion and is the mother of little Ella, whose 1-year-old birthday is today, also says,
I think that we shouldn't really censor what students are reporting on.
I think hard conversations are the best way to actually have productive conversations.
Students should have access to news, but I think it should not be news that forces them to think one way or another.
He's certainly entitled to his opinion, including his opinion that they should take the story down.
Media lawyer Jeff Hunt says since BYU is a private institution, Lee's take down the article post is not a First Amendment violation, but, quote, runs contrary to free speech theory.
So there we have some video. There's a little bit more I want to read. Let me go ahead and read it, and then we'll all weigh in, okay? I'm sure everybody has a lot to say about this particular story. I've got a few comments as well. So we've got this is, oh, there it is. You know, and so I had to get this far into the story, going to KUTV of all people, which I understand is actually a professional organization. And I'm still left wondering, what the heck is this about? What, I know it's about the article, but what in the article is all this about? I finally got to the Cougar Chronicle in an article from October 25th, written by three guys, Adam Blake, Jax McKinney, and Jacob Christensen. And it took all three of them, but thank goodness they finally got to the nub of it and said, what is going on? And then I went back and highlighted those expressions. Here's their article, or at least two paragraphs from their article. On October 17th, the Daily Universe, the official student publication of Brigham Young University, published an article entitled, Utah Women Rally for Productive Rights and Voter Action, written by Dagus Bius. The article detailed events that took place on October 12th at a rally on Utah's Capitol Hill. The event, hosted by Green Wave Utah, sought to empower women to vote and stand for their rights to reproductive care. Okay. Immediately, backlash ensued against the newspaper's use of the term reproductive care. Thank you, Cougar Chronicle. That's what the backlash is about. The newspaper's use of the term reproductive care, a pro-abortion euphemism frequently employed to advocate for the killing of the unborn. The term, used many times in the article, downplays and disguises the actual intent of the women's rally to call for the right to abort babies. Now, obviously, some of their own viewpoint is getting put into this article, but at least they told me what it was about. It's about the use and the frequent use of this term. And you were right, Rebecca. You said you remembered reproductive care. I saw reproductive rights. We don't have to go back over there and compare all those, but it's basically that idea: reproductive rights, reproductive care. And that's the article from the Cougar Chronicle. So thumbs up to you at the Cougar Chronicle for at least getting to the issue that everybody is apparently so upset about, or at least a lot of people are upset about. Okay. Oh, this is going on with their article. I forgot there was another slide. Hundreds of comments, continuing with the Cougar Chronicle, hundreds of comments flooded the Daily Universe's X and Instagram posts calling for BYU to do better. Senator Mike Lee of Utah took to X commenting, "Why do we have to put up with this at BYU?" In defense of the article and in response to Mike Lee, KUTV released a piece criticizing Lee for asking the article to be taken down, juxtaposing Lee's stance on free speech with his response, stating that the article was a straightforward report on the rally and didn't delve into differing points of view. And they didn't. It's this phrase that's causing all the concern. The piece also referenced the church's stance on abortion and birth control, noting that despite church direction leaving family planning to families, there was a swift social media backlash from anti-abortion advocates, with Lee's being one of the latest and more prominent voices in the group. And here's the thing that Rebecca got us right before showtime. Actually, she'd gotten it to me this morning, and I didn't see it because it's my fault. But here's the news, okay? You want to read this, Rebecca, since you found this one?
Let's see. Yes, this comes from that Cougar Chronicle article. It says, referencing the article, BYU Communications stated, this article was an academic and learning exercise in a student media organization. As a school of communications, we sustain the leaders, doctrines, and positions of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
So what do you take it they're saying by this? First off, obviously they're genuflecting appropriately in the last sentence, but the first part,
Yeah, I think the first part, at least they're trying to say, look, this is an academic journal. This is a newspaper where we are teaching students to report on stories. A journalist should be able to report on a story without, and not let their feelings be so strong. If it's going to be just an impartial, like you can write a story, man kills dog in the street. It doesn't mean that everybody should get up in arms that you might go kill a dog or that you advocate killing dogs. You are reporting on what happens. So, but I do want to make one quick point, because as I'm watching the chat over here, people are wondering about the Cougar Chronicle and its point of view. And I think this is important because they seem pretty dang sure that the right to reproductive care means abortion. So I'll just tell you who the Cougar Chronicle is. I'll just read this. The Cougar Chronicle is an independently run student newspaper at BYU. So BYU has a long history of alternate newspapers. When I was there, it was the Student Review. Prior to that, it was the Seventh East Press. You have these great, great stories of papers that, just kind of do things on the fringe. But in this case, the Cougar Chronicle says our mission is to articulate and spread the conservative perspective to the BYU community through the lens of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And then they make sure to make you understand that they're not affiliated with the church. So I think they definitely say they are spreading a conservative viewpoint. So their article reflects that, I think, as they talk about this other article that's trying to be impartial.
Well, I will tell you that I do agree with Hunt, that lawyer, Hunt, right? Ethan Hunt, who's talking about Mike Lee. And what he's saying is not a violation of the First Amendment in the sense that the government is not censoring. He's saying, take it down. He's not using the apparatus of government in order to do that. He's expressing his opinion. But then Hunt goes on to say, but it seems to kind of contradict basic principles of free speech. And that's where I get uncomfortable, because he is a United States senator from Utah. In other words, he is a part of the government apparatus that the First Amendment prevents from doing this kind of thing, doing it, not just talking about it, right? And he's a senator, for crying out loud. In other words, he's a pretty high mucky muck. He's not a local city council person down there in Utah somewhere, right? So he's in a position where he could do something, and he's talking about it, and it is just something that I think it was unwise for him to say that. Basic free speech, and I would say this about anybody from any side of the spectrum, okay? Basic free speech is you have the right to say what it is that you want to say, especially about political issues, under the First Amendment, though it's broader than that. It's not completely without limit. We all know that there are limits to freedom of speech, yelling fire in a crowded movie theater. We know that there are limits to freedom of the press, like defamation. So they can be sued successfully if they go beyond the pale, even though those are protected rights. And I just think that when a United States, especially a sitting United States senator, says something like that, that gives me heartburn. The correct response from my point of view, and I think from the Constitution's point of view, is that if you have a different opinion about something, you don't call for the opinion with which you disagree to be taken down so that nobody gets to see it. What you do is you talk about it, or you write about it, and you explain why it is that you disagree with what it was that was said. So the idea being, everybody can read the first thing. They can read your response to it. If there's another response, they can read that. If people have comments about it, they can read that. And people can actually make up their own mind in this country. The idea is to have free access to information, not access to only one part of the information that whoever it is who's in power feels is the one that they side with and the only one that they want to have heard. Bill, before we go to Rebecca, I was reminded of an incident that you had with Brian Hales that was similar to this. And you know what I'm talking about, so I won't bother explaining it right now. Could you just go ahead and explain it to the folks?
Yeah, I was trying to look up the episode. I was going to put it up on the screen, but I did an episode called Handshakes and Drawn Swords. And the idea was that if Joseph Smith was visited by an angel with a flaming sword, commanding him to practice polygamy or he would die, the only way Joseph Smith could be sure that angel came from God would be to test him with the very test that God told Joseph Smith that he could use, which is to offer to shake hands with the angel.
141.
Yes, Joseph seems to indicate that he was so sort of frightened by the angel. There's no description of him attempting to shake the angel's hand. Therefore, it could be an angel of darkness. He wouldn't be able to know because a handshake's the only way you know whether an angel is from God or not. Cool test that God comes up with so that we can prove angels and know which side they're on. Brian Hales was so bothered by the episode that when I published it, within about 48 hours, he reached out to me in a private email and he said, Brother Real, I'm going to, I don't know what the exact words were, but he with some force said, I'm telling you to remove that episode. And if you don't remove that episode, I'm prepared. And he included it as an attachment, his rough draft. He said, I am prepared to publish a rebuttal to your episode, which first off, just like you said, hey, me putting this out and you making a rebuttal is good for business. I'm more than happy to have your rebuttal out there.
And that's not just the way the First Amendment's supposed to work. That's the way scholarship is supposed to work too.
Yes. And so I replied to Brian Hales and said, I won't be taking my episode down. You're more than welcome to publish your rebuttal. And in the meantime, I had a rough draft to his rebuttal. So what did I do? I took the rough draft to his rebuttal, knew that I could answer every one of his questions in a logical way and resolve every one of his pushbacks. And I created episode number 2 of Handshakes and Drawn Swords, and it was almost as popular as the first.
Number 166, by the way.
So there's that. Good old Brian Hales. By the way, if you do a Google image search for Brian Hales, one of the fun images you'll find is Brian standing advertising a Mormon Discussions t-shirt. He's asked me to take that thing down too. Strangely enough, it's still found on the internet.
Well, bravo. Let's hear it for free speech. You know, Brian Hales, he's what do you call it? He's a guy who gives you the knockout drops when you're going to get operated on. He's the anesthesiologist. He makes a living, and a very good living, by the way, trying to put people to sleep. Me, on the other hand, I try and make a living trying to keep people awake. That's my goal. I'm not always successful. I hope he's more successful than I am.
Did you hear what I called him?
What did you call him?
I said he's a douche canoe, but whatever.
This is not Mormonism After Dark.
Hey, I'm sorry.
What is Brian's favorite book of the Book of Mormon?
Ether. I got it. Very good. Rebecca, what do you think about this whole story? Let's hear from you.
You know, like I said before, BYU, and I, was there in 1984. I was there until 2000, right, when I was working there too. And they've always had this history of people in the daily universe trying really hard to put these stories out, be impartial, talk about the news of the day. And it is a journalism program, yet they are under the thumb of the university, of course, being a private university. And I think when Mike Lee comes out and says, take it down, he's also kind of dog whistling to the powers that be in the church a little bit, because of course they have a relationship, the church leaders and the senator, right? We know there's a lot of back and forth there. So if he says, take it down, he may be feeling, or there may be a sense that if he says it and church leaders pay attention, they have, of course, the final say at BYU, and they could get it taken down. So that didn't happen. So some stories are kind of squelched, others are let through. And again, there's this very robust system of the independent newspaper that arises up off campus. It can never stay more than a couple years because it's privately funded and it always causes a lot of controversy. But I'm telling you, when I was at school, the Daily Universe was everywhere. You could grab one, but boy, when that student review hit the shelves, you'd grab that, and they had some really good articles. So those students at BYU, they're doing the best they can in the system. They're trying really hard, and they're also having the experience of what it's like to kind of have an alternative paper and what that means. So a lot of really good scholarship out of that. In fact, I've been trying to put together an episode. Some notables that you would know started in the Seventh East Press way back in the 70s. I mean, really? Some people in the post-Mormon community who are older started this press, and they did a lot of good work. So I think this story is about freedom of speech in that way, and I think that you covered it extremely well.
Well, thank you. Praise from Caesar.
Can I add just a couple thoughts? One is that Mike Lee seems to know a little bit about your episode, The Rules of the Game, because his effort is to get the things out of the way. Don't let them. And again, it's such a neutral thing that it seems sort of ridiculous that he wants it gone.
Mm-hmm.
He also seems to be signaling, at least in some level, I think he's signaling to the church, like, I'm church broke. I will fight for the church to be able to be extreme in its position, not even cover a taboo topic in terms of what conclusion you can come to, but not even cover the topic altogether. I also thought this was an interesting story to prompt all of us to consider the First Amendment, which protects freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, freedom of the press. And in this instance, there's a little bit of a bumping into each other of freedom of the press and freedom of religion. And this is a good one to show that on this point, I think on this particular issue, the church wins. And its newspaper wins. If the newspaper wanted to remove it, the editors of the newspaper, I think you pointed that out in a conversation with me before the show, the church itself can say, we want this gone, and it would get removed. And nobody's going to be able to take that into the legal battle of arguing that that's freedom of the press. It's in this sort of protected space where it's under freedom of religion. That would take priority. But there are other moments where those two things bump into each other. And I think it's worthy for us as citizens of a country that are under these rules to kind of consider that when these things sort of bump into each other, how might one decide which one's right and which one's wrong? I think these are important moments just to consider sort of the forest from the trees of what's going on. And then lastly, philosophically, the LDS Church, its doctrine is we are against abortion. It's a violation of the commandments of God. But the church leaves family planning to the couple or to the member. That's also church theology. Now, that would seem to me to be sort of the same thing as saying, I don't agree with abortion, but I believe in people's right to make their own choices. And the church, whether it intentionally says so or not, seems to be saying the same thing.
Yes, seems. I got a feeling that they're playing the old personal revelation card here. And what they really mean is we support the husband and the wife's decision about having children as long as they do what we tell you to do.
Amen. That's it.
All right. What's next? Rebecca, back to you.
That's right. Let's move on. And I do see some people in the chat talking about the Seventh East Press. It is well worth looking up. It's such a fascinating period of history. And as you see in the chat, Maxine Hanks, Jeff Pingree, these people
Rivera.
Very notable. He wasn't. He was asked to leave. No. Anyway, it's worth looking up, and it kind of renews my interest in doing an episode on it. I've talked to all these guys that Latter Day is mentioning in the chat, and some want to talk about it, others want to kind of it's in the past, but to me, it's a big piece of history, so I may dig in. All right, let's go to our next slide. Thank you, RFM. That was an excellently handled presentation. All right. I came across this story probably about 3 o'clock in the morning last night, because that's what I do on Sunday nights when I'm getting ready for the newscast. I no longer prepare for like Sunday school lessons or primary lessons. I prepare for the newscast. So it's very fun to have a place to put my, those skills that we all had, right, doing the lesson. So I don't know how many of you have been following for the last 7 years the series of Book of Mormon videos that have been coming out. There have been 45 altogether. I have podcasted about it here, I think on the newscast a couple times, because it brought us this version of Jesus where he's wearing this lovely frock. And I think I've done a couple things where I say who wore it best, because he's got that waistband, he's got the sleeves. Anyway, he looks marvelous. So this is a series that's been going on since 2017 and it's at the very end, 45 videos. So this article kind of took a look back at the whole history, 7 years of making these Book of Mormon videos. I'm sure if you haven't seen them, you've had relatives talk about them like I have, or put them on when you least expect it and you watch them. So it says that before they started filming in 2017, they went and talked to some of the church leaders. Back then, President Russell Nelson was just an elder Nelson. And he said, when they asked, how should we approach this? What should we do? There's all kinds of different ways we can look at it. He said, this is to help gather Israel. It's to teach the doctrine. It's to teach the covenants. And most importantly, to testify of Jesus Christ. Please filter everything through this story. And I think that's what's happened. So there was a lot to the article. It was kind of just a send off, a final reminder that this has been going on. But the part that really just made me laugh in the middle of the night, I'm calling this section, "No Man Knows My Location." Because obviously you're filming Book of Mormon videos over 7 years, 45 videos, and you have to be in a location, right? You have to indicate where you are or where in the world this is taking place. Or do you? In this case, no man knows my location. The article says, but with the distinction, visualization over dramatization, that's kind of their concept, came some particular challenges. One was set locations. Merrill was one of the directors. What he said was he called it location neutrality. That's a new phrase we all might want to learn. And that was key when choosing locations, meaning anywhere we picked for filming could not be so recognizable that viewers might think a Book of Mormon story had truly taken place there. I had to read that like 4 times in the middle of the night. They had to make sure they chose a location where it didn't really look like the Book of Mormon had happened. So I, of course, made some AI. Here is the Book of Mormon on the moon. I think that, and also on, I think that's probably planet Saturn or something. So obviously it didn't, well, we don't know. We can't say it didn't take place there, but not recognizably. So it goes on to say, so we're not saying this happened in the heartland. We're not saying this happened in Central America. We're not saying South America. What we're saying is it happened. Well, and this is the testimony of Jesus Christ.
On that last slide where you had the moon pictures.
Yes.
Is it true that behind some of those boulders in the background were hiding Quakers?
I think so. 6 foot tall moon Quakers. Yep, that's it. They're all there.
Yeah.
All the proof is there. Everything you need. So I just found that to be really interesting. And I made a post about this today because I knew I was going to talk about it on the newscast. And our friend Jackson Washburn, who often will chime in and say things on Mormonish Podcast Facebook page, he reminded me of the original article back in 2017, where they sort of said the same thing. And I read that as a nuanced, faithful member. And I read this statement here. This is when they began the whole series. He says, so we're not saying this happens in the heartland, and we're not, oh, this is the one I already read, this next one. Okay. The executive producer, Bill Elliott, said on the location neutral tactic, if the Lord hasn't shown it and the brethren haven't brought it forward, then there's no reason for us to speculate. So heaven forbid science bring it forward or archaeology bring it forward, but until the Lord or the brethren bring it forward, we're just not going to state where it is, and we're going to take great pains to have our videos made in a place that looks nothing like the Book of Mormon. So I don't know. What do you guys think about this? It just struck me as really
if
funny.
Among the brethren haven't brought it forward, excuse me, if you include Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery at a minimum amongst the category of brethren, then yes, they have brought it forward.
And Zelf, he brought it forward in a big
it's
way.
Heartland, baby. Yeah. That's what they said.
Yeah. Anyway, Bill, any thoughts on that?
Could you name 3 professional Book of Mormon archaeologists in the current moment in 2024? Is there
ones that haven't gone out to look for evidence and then kind of walked away and sort of said, no, I can't?
I know of some researchers out there, but
researcher writer. Yeah.
I can't name the members of the General Relief Society either.
No, and Cardinellis can't even.
Not even. That's right. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. The other thing that stuck out in this article, and then we'll get on to Bill's. This was very interesting. I'm calling this "Miracles for Me, but Not for Thee," and this is another inspiring story from the article about the Book of Mormon videos. And the directors say, time and time again, we saw miracles while shooting scenes along the Oregon coast of Nephi, building a ship. Okay. For example, Merrill said smoke from a mountain forest fires, those pesky forest fires, significantly obscured the beaches that they'd planned to use. But the cast and crew moved forward with faith, and the smoke cleared during filming. The day they wrapped, Merrill said, the smoke came back in. So forest fires causing smoke, they can't film. Suddenly the smoke pulls back, they film, and then the smoke comes back to where it was. So,
I'm sure that all the people who lost homes and lives and property are very inspired by that story.
Well, I know. And it goes on to be even more inspiring. It says, afterwards, I got home. This is the director talking. And I looked back at the historical satellite footage, and you could see in the satellite footage of this area right on the beach where we were that we were protected. We had ministering angels there who were helping us, supporting us. And we saw a miracle on that shoot. So I tried to do AI of angels. They kind of look like seagulls, but if you get in close, they are angels. So while people were losing homes, pets, hopefully not lives, while firefighters and helicopters were risking their lives at great peril, the ministering angels, it seems like they often make this kind of a call where they go for the car keys or the Nephi boat building shoot, and that's where they went to save the
It's
day.
a beach. There's nothing to burn.
Yeah. It was the smoke. It was in the way of the shot.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
You know, a lot of people, a lot of professionals, really high-end movie directors and producers put smoke in the shots intentionally.
Exactly. And wet concrete because it looks better. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So anyway, those were just two funny takeaways from that article, but 45 videos out there if you guys want to go check them out. The entire story of the Book of Mormon.
You know, I like your expression about no man knows my location. I thought maybe no man knows my geography.
Even better. No man knows my hemisphere. Let's just make it wider.
Yes, absolutely. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. How about this? A little known fact in that had the Jesus guy. They had to have him for quite a while in the movie. And it's a little known fact that actually they had to change actors for Jesus halfway through because unfortunately the first Jesus died during filming.
Is that true?
They waited 3 days and
there he was.
He wasn't back, so they had to move on.
Yeah.
Well, one thing we do know, RFM, is how much money BYU is paying to secure certain athletes. So, we'll lead into the story by giving you at least a little bit of information. In the past, college athletes had no access to money. In fact, if they took any sort of payment from anybody, they could be under penalty. The school could suffer consequences. Schools could have their victories turned into losses, any championships taken away. But in recent years, the U.S. legal system has deemed that college athletes have a right to their name, image, and likeness, the NIL. So in the following story regarding BYU and a high school athlete, when the acronym NIL is mentioned, recognize that that means name, image, and likeness. Good evening. A staggering new report reveals that BYU, owned by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is offering up to $4.5 million in NIL money to AJ Dibansta, the #1 overall men's basketball prospect for 2025. This massive sum is raising eyebrows, especially considering the possible source of the funding. Could some of it be coming from tithing donations of everyday church members? Dibansta, a 6'9" forward who attends Utah Prep, has impressed scouts nationwide and is being pursued by major schools like Alabama, North Carolina, and Kansas. But it's BYU's jaw-dropping NIL offer that seems to be turning heads. An offer of $4.5 million for a high school athlete. Is this what the church wants to invest in? This isn't just about sports. With an institution like BYU, where funds are tied to the LDS Church, it's important to ask, is this where tithing money is going? Every year, church members faithfully donate 10% of their income, believing it will be used for spiritual purposes, humanitarian efforts, and supporting church programs. But when millions are being funneled into recruiting a basketball player, questions arise about the church's financial priorities. Additionally, what does this kind of money mean for other students at BYU, for those hoping for scholarships, grants, or any other kind of financial aid? How does this $4.5 million offer affect their chances of receiving educational support? Could prioritizing a sports star at the high school level limit resources for those who need help paying for their education? And if BYU has this much cash to throw at athletes, what does it say about the church's broader motivations? Is it about spiritual growth, Or has athletic prestige become the real focus? This type of spending begs deeper questions about the direction and values of an institution claiming to prioritize faith and education. But beyond all these questions, maybe such is just more simple than that. One analyst had this to say: AJ isn't just going to take the highest check, but the money has to be competitive. Phil Knight could decide he wants AJ at Nike's flagship school in Oregon and make an offer no one can match. But outside of that, I believe BYU boosters will offer whatever it takes and will be AJ's highest offer, whether that be $4 million, $5 million, $6 million, etc. Getting AJ would mean more to BYU than any other school. If AJ goes to North Carolina, Kansas, or whatever other school, he will be great. At those two schools specifically, he'd have that powerful brand behind him his whole career. He would also be another name in the long line of NBA greats. At BYU, AJ not only will elevate BYU basketball, but he has a chance to change the perception of the entire university. BYU is associated with the church, and true or not, I think many boosters believe that AJ can open doors for BYU as a whole, and to an extension, the church. If the potential future face of Nike can go to BYU, why can't a five-star quarterback choose BYU? And for a university like BYU that can seem weird to outsiders as a strange, mostly white university tucked away in Utah, having AJ associated with BYU his whole life can open doors and break down barriers. And if BYU is in the public spotlight, does that have a marketing impact for church and missionary efforts? Maybe not, but no other boosters at any school are asking those questions. Those mean something to BYU, which is why I think boosters won't be outbid to get talent like AJ. And what I would just add sort of in the conclusion, the way I understand how this works is there are significant wealthy donors, boosters at every school, and they're going to essentially foot the bill for these kinds of things. But we do know that BYU gets some of its funding from church donations from members. And so I think it's fair to ask sort of where this money comes from. My hunch is that most of it is coming from private donors to the university. In what they're trying to, the last thing there, the main point it was trying to make was that BYU and those who are concerned about its relevance and the impact that it has are often thinking about these issues in a much different way than just a normal college. BYU is tied to the church and is considering if a certain athlete who sort of brings down some of the racial barriers that have existed in the past in the church and sort of gives the image of its star athletes being people of color, and it sort of opens the door. He's got a foreign name. I don't know necessarily where he's from, but I assume he's a U.S. citizen. But with a foreign name, it's sort of, you could see why the church would think this is a great marketing strategy to have a black athlete who has a foreign sort of name being prominent at their school, that it might in fact do what that last quote said, which is open up doors that otherwise may not have been accessible. And but at the same time, $4.5 million to a high school kid to bring him into your school. I guess my point being is that BYU might see the value as higher than a normal college would, because the impact of this kid, his reach would be far beyond just the school. It would affect sort of the image of the church in various places as well. Your thoughts, you two?
I think in theory, but as someone mentioned in the chat, my first comment is BYU has more money than any of these. There are ways that they can always give more money. They can win every tournament, as it was said in the chat. They can do whatever they want with the money. And as we all know, on the tithing slip, the Perpetual Education Fund went away. I guess it's now the Perpetual Basketball football, sports fund, right? So I don't know. It just seems like it's not an even playing field, because you know that all the church has to do is ask a wealthy donor, say, hey, this is important to us for all the reasons that you just stated, and we need this, So that's one of my thoughts, that I don't know the impact that other people may see. They may see it as that, oh, they can just buy anything with money without knowing where that phrase comes from. Other schools, other universities may feel that and see that as they see all their best players going to BYU. Now that kind of changes things at BYU too. And now when I was at BYU in the 80s, was at parties before where there was like alcohol things going on, and there would be athletes were there would be a phone call, on a phone with a cord, right? And they'd say, get the athletes out. They were tipped off. They can't be caught at a party where there's alcohol. They have to appear to be keeping all the standards, so there's all those issues of kids coming in that weren't raised LDS, and, are the standards really something that is going to work? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe it is. But in my day, as I say, I know that they definitely showed favoritism to the athletes as far as them making sure that they would not get into any kind of trouble. So it's going to be really interesting to watch this. If they get this kid, which he seems incredible, you're right, the publicity is going to be through the roof. And when they get the next kid, and pretty soon we're going to be taking every tournament, every game, everything. So whether that's good or bad, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know enough about this to really have a strong opinion one way or the other. I'm sure there are persuasive arguments on both sides. It strikes me, though, that college sports, let's just say college football, college basketball, is just going to be professional basketball, professional football at an earlier age. All those things that, in my mind, made college sports different and in some ways more special than professional sports, it sounds like it's going to be obliterated across the board.
It also indicates to me, if you have the money to pay this guy $4.5 million, now that you have to pay people for their name, image, and likeness, this guy's going to get multiple offers from multiple schools, and he can take the highest offer. What it means is that at a time when you didn't have to pay them, you were still probably making $4.5 million or more on his name, image, and likeness. And when you add up, the top 5, 10 players on a top 5 on a basketball, or top 10 or 15 on a football team, you're making some really nice cash on those folks. And sometimes those folks those kids get injured and they never play another game. They don't make it to the pros. And the one entity that benefits, I'm with you, RFM, it sort of takes away from the joy of amateur sports, but also the schools make a lot of money on the backs of these kids.
That's a good argument from the other side too.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Let's turn the time back over to Rebecca. She's got a few more stories for us, and we'll go with those.
I have a couple more. I'm so distracted by your pipe, though, RFM. It's great. It's awesome. I'm just distracted by it. Okay. As I said, a new segment called Tut Temple Update Time. I have 2 quick ones for us. Let's see if I can move these. Here we go. Okay. So this is kind of big. The Deseret Peak, Utah Temple. The open house was just going on for the last couple weeks. I meant to try to get over there, but I did not. This was announced back in 2019. And if you want to know what the Lone Peak, Nevada temple is going to look like, this is pretty much it. The same size, 71,000 square feet and 182 feet tall. Look at that there.
It looks like something out of the Arabian Nights.
It does, doesn't it? There's no way to miss that out there in the Tooele area. So the reason this temple is so exciting is because the dedication is coming up. We've heard of dedications before, but this is incredibly special because President Russell M. Nelson will dedicate the Deseret Peak, Utah Temple. This is the headline in the church news. He's actually going to be dedicating this temple because it is the 200th temple to be dedicated. And this is quite something, or is it? We'll kind of crunch some numbers in a minute. So for anyone who's interested in this, the dedication ceremony will be at 4 p.m. Mountain Time on November 10th. That's a Sunday. And it's going to be rebroadcast in meeting houses all over at 7 p.m. So I'm sure if you want to watch this somehow, you can find a way. So it says, let's see.
I wonder if it will be pre-recorded. What's the over under on that?
Okay, so this is how cynical I am. That's the first thing I thought when I heard he was going to dedicate it. Will he actually physically be there on the location in Tooele at the temple? I don't know. Or will they just have a screen and there he is? I'm not sure what's going to happen. I really don't know. I have no idea. Anyway, so he's also going to be accompanied by Elder Gary E. Stevenson. Ironically, those are the two that spoke in conference about the end of the world rhetoric. So that's interesting that they're both going out there to Tooele area. Let's see. So
it must be sad to be a billionaire and contemplating the end of the world next week.
Must be. He should start giving his money away if he really thinks the end of the world is coming.
If he really did. To lay up treasure in heavens, Gary.
That's right. That's right. You have to give it away. So it says this event marks a significant milestone because it's the 200th temple, as I just said. It's located in Tooele, Utah, and it has been a beacon of faith and community ever since the announcement by President Nelson on April 7th, 2019. Or has it? I don't know how many of you remember this, but it was not announced as being in Tooele. It was first going to be built in a little town called Erda. And I was talking to RFM about this about a couple hours ago. He goes, what the hell's Erda? Well, Erda is a big story, and Mormonish is putting an episode out on this. Look, I shamelessly plugged myself, but it's a fascinating story. I'm calling it The Little Town That Said No, because they did. Is the temple in Erda? It is not. It is in Tooele. And there is a big backstory on this. So look for that episode next week sometime. So Beacon of Hope.
Erda is a town in Utah?
Yeah, it's where the temple was announced. It's a tiny little rural, no infrastructure, just absolutely as rural as you can get.
Where is it located?
What?
I'm sorry, I was asking, where is it?
It's about 20 miles from Tooele, where the temple is now. But the temple is going to be built there, and a massive high density residential community there with the size acreage lots that the town doesn't support. And so the town kind of said, well, no, we love the temple. We just don't want the housing. Where is the temple now? Exactly. So we'll see how that all panned out later on. But yeah, it's a really interesting story. The little town that said no. So again, at the end of this article in the Deseret News, they reiterated it. Why are we building temples at such an unprecedented pace? The prophet asked in October 24 General Conference. And I also take exception to the word building. I don't think we're building temples. I think we're announcing temples. There's a big difference. Yeah. I've spent the last week or so talking with and podcasting with Laura Lee Hall, who is the former chief temple architect. And I'm going to bring up some of her points in a minute here. Why? Because the Lord has instructed us to do so. That's the answer now to all the residents in all these towns. The Lord has said, this is why we're doing it. The blessings of the temple help to gather Israel on both sides of the veil. These blessings also help to prepare a people who will help prepare the world for what? The second coming. So again, they're talking about this is very close. We need more and more temples for the second coming. And the Lord has told us to build them, which is why I made this amazing AI of Jesus literally bursting into flames. You don't even need a spire because you have flaming Jesus on top of the temple. There it is.
It's like Johnny Storm.
It kind of is. That's exactly right. So what do the numbers actually show? That's what's really interesting. And they're probably too small for me to read. So I'm going to have to read them all. Or you know what? I'm going to make you, can you see them? Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. I can see them better now. Okay, so these are temple stats. And as I talked to Laura Lee Hall, she made this really interesting point. She said, how many temples are actually being dedicated and built each year? She goes, when I was the chief temple architect for a number of decades, we could crank out about 6 to 8 temples. And I started thinking and I started kind of Googling, and yeah, it's the same, 6 to 8 temples. Although they are announcing copious amounts of temples, the amount of temples that are being built remain the same. And according to Laura Lee, she's like, we don't have the infrastructure in the church because it's a centralized system of construction to create more than that many temples. We don't have the pipeline. You just get stuck right there. Now, we do have prefab temples now for the smaller ones that are around the 10,000 foot. Those are manufactured in China. I don't know if I ever told the story. Maybe I did, but my co-host on Mormonish, Landon, people had always said, where are these pieces manufactured? He does work all over the world in construction. And so he was gosh, was he in Korea, Japan, somewhere? Anyway, talking to a company. And the company said, oh, yeah, we do a lot of work for the LDS church. And he's like, right away, got his pen and paper and his microphone. You do? And they said, yeah, we make those prefab temple pieces that they use for the pop-up temple. And Landon's all, hot damn, there it is, right out of the mouth of the people that make it. So yes, there is the prefab temple. So those go up a little quicker, but go ahead and Google. There aren't as many as you would think. So these stats kind of show it. We have prophet, tenure, announcement, groundbreaking, and dedicated. Okay. So I took it back to Hinckley, of course. So President Hinckley, prophet for 12 years. Within that 12 years, oh my gosh, I don't think I can read it. RFM, can you take us through it? Because it's just too blurry kind of on my screen for some reason. Can you see it and unmute yourself?
Gordon B. Hinckley was the prophet. The tenure was basically almost 13 years.
Right.
He announced 79 temples. There was groundbreaking for 81 temples, but I think the important stat that you're aiming for is dedicated were 77 temples.
Yeah, and those are numbers that are all within a range of each other, right? They're all, maybe a couple fell through the cracks or something didn't get built, but it's all right there within 4 temples with each other, and 77 were dedicated.
I think that's 6 temples a year.
Yeah, exactly. This is what Laura Lee was trying to tell me. She said there is a procedure and there's a pipeline, and it seems like they have not changed that to meet this incredible need that we'll see as we go through the stats. So then what happened when President Monson was the prophet?
Well, he was a slacker. He was prophet for basically 10 years, and there was 35 temples. So that's 3.5 temples a year.
Yep, exactly. And he announced how many?
37? I'm sorry, announced 45, groundbreaking on 37.
And he built, what was that number again? Sorry,
35.
My screen is so blurry, 35. And again, those numbers are all kind of within a range of each other that you would expect. You announce maybe some, something happens, they don't get built, some are built. It seems like that's pretty normal, okay? So now let's read Russell M. Nelson's stats. This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, he's around 7 years as prophet, and 185 temples announced. Wow, that is more than, I think it's more than both of the 2 prior prophets before him. So Gordon B. Hinckley announces 79, Thomas S. Monson announces 45, and Russell Nelson announces 185 temples. Groundbreaking for Gordon B. Hinckley was 81, which is the same as Russell Nelson, currently at 81. But let me see here. And dedication, 77 for Gordon B. Hinckley. We talked about that. Thomas S. Monson is 35, and Russell Nelson is 40 temples.
Yeah, what do those numbers say to you, RFM? Isn't that fascinating to see it spelled out like that?
Gordon B. Hinckley was much more on the job
and I'll tell
than
you
Russell
why.
Nelson is.
Yeah, in his era, and this is when Laura Lee was the chief architect, his concept was, we've talked about this before, and I've done an episode on it, the kind of hometown temple, the neighborhood temple, the smaller temple, that you could do a couple sessions, and then, as he explained, run the vacuum, and then turn off the lights and go home. It wasn't a big production. So he did build 45 of these kind of little mini temples in his tenure. So he announced them with the intention of seeing most of them built. He would see the groundbreaking, and then he would see them built. I feel that Monson did the same thing. He announced them with the capability to see it all the way through and to build it. There was a plan in place. Then you get to Nelson. It's absolutely off the chart. Announcement. Laura Lee told us, it used to be you do a lot of due diligence on location. Now it's just an announcement. You make the location fit later. And we're seeing that with the pushback from some of the residents. So
and sometimes you can't, sometimes like with Hong Kong, was it Hong Kong or somewhere else in China?
China is the one that is now off the list. They simply announced it, and now it's gone if you look at the list of temples. So, but I thought this was incredible. So I kind of did a little more math on the next slide here. So overall, in the entire life of the church, there have been 367 LDS temples announced. Now, within that number, some have been built, some have been dedicated, some have had groundbreakings. So 200 of those temples have been dedicated or will be with this Deseret Peak. And so that is 55% of the temples that have been announced have been built. So if you were in school and you get your paper back and it has a 55 on it, what does that mean?
You failed.
It's an F. Like it shows right there, F. right? It's an F grade. So a lot more temples being announced. To me, that's sort of throwing mud on the wall. And as Laura Lee described, a backlog for a century. How long is it going to take them to build 167 temples if they stopped announcing today at 8 to 10, 6, 8, 10 a year? I don't know. It's pretty fascinating when you really look at the numbers and then you start thinking, as we've talked about before, why these announcements? They generate excitement. They allude to growth that isn't there. And Laura Lee Hall had an amazing episode on Mormon stories today. If you guys haven't caught that, John brought up the point that he's hearing anecdotally that these towns where there isn't any progress on a temple, maybe it was announced 3 years ago and nothing has happened yet. Can you guess whose fault it is? Whose fault is that?
It's the members for not paying tithing.
Exactly. Or bringing more members, being a member missionary. Yeah. So they can spin it like that and they don't have to do a dang thing except for announce it and then hold it over your head for decades. So I don't know. Bill, what do you think about these stats? I thought they were fascinating.
It is going to be interesting to watch the leaders going forward if they sort of go like, I no use in announcing anymore. What's going to take us a decade. I mean, Nelson was announcing around 26 temples a year. You're going to have a decade and a half of just trying to play some sort of catch up before you even felt like you could even approach naming again. So if the next guy wants to beat Nelson and the guy after that wants to beat that guy, it's just going to start to get ridiculous where there's 300 temples announced and, again, you're building 6 to 8 a year. I think most people are going to look back and see President Hinckley as a much more effective Mormon leader anyway. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of strange that Nelson tried to play this game of announcing way more temples than Hinckley, but unable to complete them. Nelson seemed to have a little bit of a trouble getting across the finish line.
Yep, I think so too. And I think I'd be really interested what any faithful member would think of that graph, the last one that I showed, if they even realize that, if that means anything or how they would interpret that. But to me, it just, this excessive announcement. So when it says, why are we building temples at such an unprecedented pace? You're not. It's the same pace. You're just announcing your intention. Someday, pipe dream, wish list, someday to have more.
Yeah, they're announcing temples that they're never going to be built.
Yep.
It's kind of like the second coming. They keep announcing it, but it's never going to happen.
It's always just out of reach, but that's enough to keep people engaged and involved and also fearful of stepping away, like the second coming rhetoric. So, all right. So that's what's up with Deseret Peak. We'll show some pictures from that groundbreaking in a couple weeks when it happens. So let's see. Now, this is a really interesting quick story. And I'm so lucky to have two friends that live in Belgium. One is a mutual friend, Martine, and then I have another friend there too. And one of them brought to my attention this article about the Brussels, Belgium temple. And there are some stats on it. It was announced in 2021. It's going to be one of those ones where they repurpose an existing building, as you can see there on the screen, and they're going to fit it into the community. There's no place they can build a standalone temple. It's going to have a meeting house in it, I think a reception area. So it'll be maybe kind of like the Manhattan Temple, where you're in a more urban area and you kind of build up, right? You got the temple on one floor, you got the meeting house. So anyway, exciting announcement. Everybody's absolutely thrilled. And then this very interesting article came out. This is by Alan Lallemande, and it is in the Gazette van Antwerp. And again, I couldn't read it, but I had friends that could. So this is great. So the article says the Mormon Church purchased this property in 2021 and in the same year applied for a zoning change to a religious and cultural center. So same MO. As we know, we have to go in and apply to change the zone so you can put your religious building in. An environmental permit for conversion to a house of worship followed on June 25th of this year. This application was rejected. Did we ever hear anything about that? I don't think we ever did. I guess they don't really announce the nuts and bolts of what's happening with a temple when it's, this is the back and forth, the legal back and forth. It would not be in line with the regional zoning plan, is what they said in Brussels. The Brussels environment confirms that the procedures and negotiations are continuing correctly in accordance with the regulations of the city of Brussels, said the spokesman for the church in Belgium. So just what I said, the church says, no, this is just fine. It's back and forth. It's what normally happens. So an opening date has not been announced. So we don't know when it's going to be built. So now this is the part where it gets really interesting. The Mormon church itself claims to have 7,000 members in our country. The Observatory for Harmful Cults in Belgium, the IACSSO, calls that an overestimate. Oh, dear.
The Observatory for what?
For harmful cults. It's a watchdog group that looks at organizations that are coming into the country and assesses whether they might meet the criteria of being considered something a little more harmful than just a religion. So it's called the Observatory for Harmful Cults. Anyway, so they say this is an overestimate to say there are 7,000 members there. Journalist Alan Lamond, who wrote a book on cults in Belgium, rather estimates the number at around 4,200. And if we do the math on that, that tracks with everything that we track as far as the percentages and the overestimations. The IACSSO says it keeps a close eye on the faith community. Polygamy, the organization renounced, but it still opposes abortion, contraception, and homosexuality. Church members also donate 10% of their total income. It is not known how much the investment in Brussels will cost. The Information and Advisory Center on Harmful Cultarian Organizations, Cultarian, I don't know what that is either, is an independent center established at the FPS Justice. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, we wouldn't say cultarian organizations. We would just say cults.
Yes, I think that's what we would say. Exactly. So anyway, fascinating, huh? I'm sure most of you weren't staying up at night wondering what was happening with the Belgium Brussels temple, but now we know. Looks like there's a watchdog group looking into it, and they're working on getting the correct permits. So we'll see.
When it comes to China, sort of here at least stalling out for a moment, sort of strange that our Father in heaven would tell his prophet where to put a temple, only to find out that the chain of events would be such that maybe such an idea could be thwarted. You think the master of the universe would sort of know the end game?
Yes.
I don't know.
You would say, I have the power.
The master of the universe might have known that the location that he designated for Heber Valley would require that millions of gallons a day of water are pumped out from the land underneath the temple. There's all kinds of things. And again, this goes back to what Laura Lee Hall keeps telling us. It used to be you would do that kind of due diligence on the ground. You would choose a site. She herself was sent out to select all the sites. You look very carefully. You talk to the community. You understand what's happening. That's not what's happening now. You're just throwing out announcements. Remember the announcement about India? That just came into President Nelson's head while he was standing at the stand and said, there's going to be a temple in India. You haven't done any due diligence. And these are the kind of problems that you're going to run into. You're going to run into neighborhood pushback, and it's just going to happen over and over. So
I've got a feeling that Johnny Storm Jesus is not going to be happy with the good people in Erda.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fascinating to watch, though. I have to say, it really is. I don't know if everyone's tired of me talking about it, but to me, this whole temple building stuff is where they say it out loud. They don't mean to, but they do. So it's really interesting to watch.
Where did you get that bit about it just coming into President Nelson's mind at the stand when he was announcing temples?
That's in different articles in the church news that he didn't know he was going to say it, and then he was impressed to say it.
There are times when I say things that I didn't intend to say. It usually ends badly.
I know. We watch your podcast.
Thank you. Zing.
Zing.
Well, Rebecca, you've got one final story for us.
I have one final story. I do, because that's right, because I realized that this is the podcast before Halloween, right? It's not Halloween Eve. It's pre-Halloween Eve. So there's a couple things floating around out there that I thought would be interesting. So this I came across, and there were so many just great comments that people made on this. I just thought I have to share this on the newscast. It's just wonderful. So I actually made this meme, but it's a Christian sentiment. It says, a Christian is like a pumpkin. God picks you from the patch, brings you in, washes all the dirt off of you. Then he cuts off the top. He scoops out all the yucky stuff. He removes the seeds of doubt, hate, greed, etc. And then he carves you a new smiling face and puts his light inside of you to shine for all. So I posted out there this on social media just to see what some people would think of it. And there were some really interesting comments. First, let me ask you guys, have you heard this before? It's sort of a metaphor for Halloween and being a Christian.
I suppose I came up with it myself a number of years ago for the primary class. It wasn't that detailed. And I'm wondering, what the heck is this cutting off the top crap?
That is a questionable thing.
Yeah, they don't
get the metaphor.
analogize that to anything. I think I know what it means, though. It means you cut off your head and get rid of your thinking skills.
That's a great, yeah. Everybody had a different take on that. Any thought, Bill, before I read these quickly?
No, I've never seen this pumpkin analogy, although it appears that what it happens is you, like you say, cut the top off, take all the brains of the jack-o'-lantern out, and then force it to look the way you want it to. And then you can put any facial expression on it because that's the one it has to carry for you.
Yeah, I mean, this is just metaphor gold. So somebody said, so he takes out everything of substance, leaves a shell, and then carves you into an image that he prefers. Interesting. Exactly what you said, Bill. And then someone else wrote, and then the squirrels eat you, which I thought was really good. Somebody else said, and then he leaves you on the front porch to decay and throws you in the trash when you've gone bad and will never give a second thought to you again. And I have to say that one of our favorites in the chat, Diamond Dave, said, that sounds like my last relationship. So I guess that might have been it. Somebody else said, and throws you away when the shine is gone. Yep, that's a good one too. Another contributor said, I like myself so much better today, and I love life now that I regrew myself after being hollowed out by the church. I'm good, thanks. I'm happy just to be a pumpkin and not all jacked up. LOL. I thought that was really good. We have some very creative people out there in our environment, don't we? And then one of my friends wrote, Jesus wants me for a pumpkin, right? A jack-o'-lantern to shine for him each day. I wonder, is that your lesson, RFM? Is that kind of what you came up when you were a primary teacher?
No, and I wasn't a teacher. I was just I don't know. Somehow I was there to give a message, and it was Halloween, and I just thought jack-o'-lantern and the light of Christ and Jesus, and there's the candle glowing, and we can all be Jesus's jack-o'-lanterns.
I love it. You were asked to give the Halloween message. That's wonderful in primary. Somebody else says, leaves you an empty shell of your former self to rot eternally. Let's just take it to the end. And then somebody said, being a Christian is like being a pumpkin. You get your brains removed and are made to look happy regardless of how you really feel. So yeah, interesting, but some strong emotions there. So, okay. So let's end on a lighter note here because it is almost Halloween. And I know you guys are probably looking for costumes. I was trying to find a really inexpensive costume. I think I came up with a really good one. I don't know how many of you guys have seen the movie Smile, but I just decided to answer the door like that with the smile face on. Super cheap. All you have to do is smile. So for those of you that'll see the movie, you'll get it and you'll laugh. So you haven't seen it, have you, RFM? You look really cute.
I think I've seen the trailers.
Yeah, exactly. It's like people that just
now, right?
maniacally smile, right? And don't stop. So anyway, cheap costume ideas. So, but let's talk about some LDS themed Halloween costumes, right? What can we expect to see our LDS friends and neighbors, or even some of us wearing this Halloween? There's a lot of good ones. So of course you can do the Book of Mormon, right? That's tried and true. You can wear the Book of Mormon right there. You're like a living, breathing, walking pass along card when you go to the door. You can also dress up like Angel Moroni. We've seen this before too, where you, gold tinfoil, cover yourself with gold face paint, and there you are, the Angel Moroni greeting everybody at the Ward Halloween party, which looks like a lot.
Just don't sit on anybody's furniture if you decide to do the gold paint Moroni.
No,
yep, that's right. We talked about that before because I've shown this before. You do not sit on the furniture. I love that.
Why are the Book of Mormon and the Bible interlacing fingers? That's what I want to know.
Well, they're the two sticks of Joseph, right? There you go. They have to be together. They're a match set. And speaking of match set, you can do a family costume, CTR for everybody, or husband and wife, looks like Moroni and the Book of Mormon, hand in hand. So these are very inspiring. Yes. And you can kind of wear your religion on your sleeve at Halloween. So
is that your stick of Joseph, or are you just happy to see me?
Yeah. Oh, he had to go there. So Book of Mormon costumes are extremely popular. These are all real costumes that I found from real people. You can dress up like whoever those guys are on the top left. A little kid right there is Helaman. On the bottom right, you have, that's actually a post-Mormon dressed up like layman, because I think the post-Mormon crowd tends to more go after the layman Lemuel costume. So I thought that was really good, taken right out of those church manuals. And then interestingly, here in the middle is somebody who is selling a Book of Mormon costume. You can see the look he's going for over there on the upper right. And he says he's going to sell it for $30. The accessories are not for sale, but they might be for sale. So I don't know.
Gold plates sold separately.
Gold plates are sold separately. That's exactly right. But, it's a fun costume, but I feel like it kind of limits you at the ward party. You have to just sit there at the table. I mean, you can't really get up and move around.
Yes, and no cartwheels.
Don't forget this guy. This guy dressed like Moroni too on a special occasion. So.
It's interesting. I had him on that slide and I go, ooh, RFM and Bill are going to kill me if I make the joke. Oh, how'd he get in there? So I did not put him there. It was Bill. So
I don't know. Bill put on some weight and went to the gym a little bit. That might look kind of like Bill.
It maybe a little. Well, everyone thought he was a gladiator, but all of us knew because he was waving that title of liberty. There's only one.
How much do you weigh?
Where was that? Was it not in the slides?
RFM, how much do you weigh?
Huh?
Oh, let's not go there. I'm logging off if we start with that kind of talk.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, look at that. Absolutely. That's you.
Yeah, what are you weighing at today? What's the
You think that looks like Bill, RFM?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Really?
Just give him a few years and a few pounds.
I'm at 198. We can go around the room and
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Rebecca wait, first. My mic's muted. I wait. Oh, now I'm back. Well, Bill, I'll tell you how we can settle this. Next week, please wear, I know you have one, a gladiator costume on the air.
Yeah, but
he's like, yeah, no.
And it looks remarkably like this costume.
Mine's for special parties. So.
I was going to say, I know you have one. Whether or not you want to break it out for this, we're not.
I would tell you how much I weigh.
Mormonism after dark.
I'm sorry. I tell you how much I weigh, except the scale broke the last time I stood on it.
Yeah.
All right, let's get through the rest of these costumes. Okay, so missionary, that's a good costume. Believe it or not, a lot of people who aren't LDS think it's cute to dress up like a missionary. So you got the tag, the backpack, you got the helmet. Over on the right, ooh, zombie missionary. That's kind of a good one. They painted their faces all gray, Walking Dead missionary. And you can see they have tire tracks across their white shirts. Do you see that? Like they've been run over and come back as zombies. Now, this guy, I don't know what happened there exactly or what he was going for, but something. I'm not sure. I don't even know if this is a costume. Like I said, I just found it on the dark web. I have no idea what it is. Let's move on. Polygamy is a big one. When I was at BYU, I was asked to participate in a polygamist costume. There was one of my family home evening brothers, and he gathered all 37 of us family home evening sisters, and he goes, let's go to the dance. I'll be the husband and you guys be the wives. I said, no, thank you. I'm going to go to the movies instead. But this is a popular costume and really easy to put together. So that's a good one. Let's see. Oh, the LDS Church is trying to appear more Christian, right? So just go straight at Christianity. You've got Adam and Eve on the left. You've got, you may as well dress up like the Holy Bible in the middle. On the right, you have a Christian song leader. It is okay now for Mormons to do this. We've seen...
The Holy Bible one looks like a tissue box.
It does. I think it's probably repurposed. Yeah.
Just grab the head and yank.
Yeah, that's anyway, all kinds of Christian themed costumes that I think would be really good if somebody wanted to try that. Also, this is kind of fun. The things that we've lost in the last couple years, as far as what the church used to do, ministering, 3-hour block, scouts, this is, I think, from a trick or trunk, but look at all these things that they're, facetiously saying, say goodbye to, it's died. But this is kind of a testament to all the change we've seen in the church over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Get your own planet, the great apostasy, gravestones for them all.
That's an interesting take on it. President Nelson has really been trying his best to kill off the Mormon church, hasn't he?
That is exactly what I thought when I saw it all put it together like that with a Halloween theme, to kill off what we all knew it as. That's exactly right.
Is Mormon on there? The word Mormon?
I can't read in the back. It might
there's a couple I can't see.
Yeah. Anyway, really interesting, huh? So that's a fun costume too. You can think of some more of your own. Okay. So what little kid? Oh, here we go. Okay. So I decided to come up with some of my own that we could wear based on church themes and things that we've seen in conference. So like I said, Bill, I'll be talking about water bottles. Crush the water bottle costume. We all remember that, right? It was
Mhm.
Haney, wasn't it, RFM? It was Haney
It was
who
Mr. Haney. And
Haney
if
who
you're
walked
Henry B.
into lunch.
Eyring,
It
if you're
was
Henry B.
Eyring and
Eyring, you will
Oakes
lie on.
and Nelson. Yep, they were sitting in a cafeteria table, the Mean Girls table, and they invited him over to be nice. President Nelson crushed his water bottle, and everybody else said, "Oh my gosh, the prophet has crushed a water bottle.
And
I
then he
need to do it
left.
too." That's right. Oh, they made this joke that Eyring crushed it to the side.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. If he's going as Eyring, he has to lay down.
Yeah, you have to lay down. So anyway, water bottle costume, you can stand at the porch and then you can crush yourself down. Everyone will get the message. Follow the prophet. I think it's great. I think it's a good one. And it has a good environmental message. Okay. How about President Nelson's flaming spiral of death airplane costume, right? Who can forget that? You're in the plane, you can tell the story, you can careen. You need to find somebody to walk with you who's a scared atheist, though. I think that was part of the story.
Needs
The
to be a
woman who was
female too. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
you need to find somebody and you can kind of repurpose that if you remember Brad Wilcox's story where he said studies have shown that the atheists, when the plane goes down, are the ones that stomp on everybody else. So there's a lot you can do with a plane, I'm just saying, as far as the
Right.
metaphor.
It's very popular in Delta, Utah this year.
Yes, that's exactly right. So, yep. So that's a good one. Okay, here's a couple's costume. Who can say no to this? The Rock and the Hat couple's costume. One of you go as the hat, one of you go as the rock. You kind of walk around, you block the light, you see, I can see a lot of possibilities for this cute couple's costume at the word party.
I like it. I thought we were having a visit from Joanne Worley there for a
Yeah,
second.
it kind of looked like it a little bit, but no. Yeah, feel free,
Sounded like
anybody, to use any of these ideas. I think they're brilliant. So,
I
okay.
love it.
Who doesn't love a kid dressed as a horse, a pony? There you go. Of course, these are, Mesoamerican ponies, otherwise known as the tapir, but adorable ponies. Your kids can go as a pony. Or if you're a Heartlander, your kid going as a pony would look more like this. That's a deer. You can do it whichever way you want to do it. But again, adorable children on Halloween, costumes for everybody. Okay, here we go. Think Celestial. These are real t-shirts. You can just wear a Think Celestial t-shirt. And now, of course, look over to the right. You can wear a Think Celestial cutoff tee. That's for men and women, right? Those garments, when they come out, Q4, are going to be for men, the wife beater, and women. So that's kind of a cool costume. Here's somebody who said, Think Celestial. He crossed out the Celestial and said, Think is a good start. Kind of makes a statement. I don't know how much candy you would get, but at least you're kind of saying what you think. So that's a good one.
I like the light bulb. Do you know how many Mormons it takes to screw in a light bulb, Rebecca?
You don't have to because it's all gaslight.
Yes. Very good. Very good. The other one I like is the answer to that same riddle about how many Mormons it takes to screw in a light bulb is I think it's 2. One, or to change a light bulb, right? Yeah. 2. One to change it and one to say that it was never changed.
That it was never changed. Those are the greatest jokes ever. This is so fun. Okay. Oh, here's a good one. The versatile stay on the boat or stay in the dinghy costume, right? You're literally in the boat in this costume. There are many, many metaphors that we've heard at conference about staying in the boat, staying in the dinghy. I'm on a cruise ship, all that kind of stuff. A lot of them. So it's a very versatile costume.
I love it.
That looks like a rather elaborate costume, and maybe I know she's got straps, right, going up with there, because I'm thinking that would be hard on your back. It would be hard for me to
She's
hold
got
something
straps.
like
She's literally in the boat.
that.
About
Okay.
as in the boat as you can get. That's the whole point. Okay, so then we had the last conference. I don't know if you guys paid attention to Elder Bradley. He's just barely started using his middle initial. Is it L? L Wilcox?
I'm not even sure who we're talking about.
Is it E? Brad Wilcox? But he now goes by
Wilcox.
Elder Bradley, and he put his initial in for gravitas. L, I
Mhm.
think it's L. No,
That should deflect the criticism.
it should, absolutely. Anyway, so he made this comment. He said, you can't be a lifeguard if you dress like the other swimmers on the beach. So to
Right.
me, that says he wants everybody to dress like lifeguards. So here we go. With the Brad Wilcox stamp of approval, you can all dress like lifeguards. For those of you that are not old like me, this is Baywatch. This was an amazing program way back in the day. That's the Hoff standing right there. Feel free to dress like a lifeguard for Halloween. There it is. Did you watch this show, RFM?
Never.
Never.
Great
No.
writing.
I never watched
Great
this show.
writing.
Never watched this show. But I know it's David Hasselhoff.
The Hoff.
David, and he was from Dark Rider.
Yep.
Knight Rider.
Right.
Knight Rider with his car Kit.
Knight Rider. I never
Uh-huh.
watched that either. But it was very famous. And then there's these other 5 people, and the blonde is famous. It's not
Pamela
Lonnie
Sue.
Anderson. What is it?
Pamela Sue.
Pamela Sue Anderson,
Yes.
Lonnie's daughter.
Yes.
Kidding.
I think so. Or is it
No,
just
I'm kidding.
Pamela Anderson? Pamela Sue might have been Nancy Drew. Oh, I'm getting them all mixed up now. Anyway, she's now known as the most beautiful woman in the world because she's, I think, in her early 60s and she doesn't wear makeup and she's absolutely gorgeous. So somebody tell us in the chat. I think it's Pamela Anderson. Yeah, not Sue. Pamela
Well, the
Anderson.
Hawk's still looking pretty good.
He looks great. You know, he's a recording artist. Did you know that in
I
Germany?
had no idea.
He's like #1 on the charts in Germany and he's known as the Hoff. It's kinda awesome.
Really?
Yes. All right.
Well, what I want to know is with it's Bradley Wilcox, right?
Yeah.
Since he's in the Young Men's now, what are the oh my gosh. Hang on a second. I'm going to say what are the Banana Splits doing for a drummer?
Oh my gosh. You made me make that terrible meme. Stop.
Yes,
Okay,
I did.
let's move
I
on.
said there was a gun to your head and made you make that
You
meme.
did. You forced me. Okay, let's move on. We're almost finished here with the costumes. Okay, this is the one that everybody's wearing. This is the brand new one that's just out this year because it's a brand new concept. This is the Steeple Doctrine costume. Look how adorable these children are. I mean, can you just see all these little steeples running around the neighborhood? And the beauty of it, of course, is that at night when it gets dark, oh my gosh, you don't need a flashlight. It'll literally light up the entire cul-de-sac. Your entire party can just follow you around in your steeple costume. So I think those are great. Yeah, somebody says they're not tall enough. Well, consider these kids are like 3 feet tall. So for them, it's twice as tall. So higher, lighter, brighter. Anyway, the Doctrine of the Steeple costume, I think those are great. So, but I will tell you, this is for real. Those were all pretend. The #1 costume on social media this year is the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives costume. All you need is a blue coat or a baggy dark sweatsuit. You need a swig drink, possibly a box of Fruity Pebbles. If you've watched the show, you know what I'm talking about. But everybody is going as the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. You just need a blue coat. That's it. Back to you, Bill.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, both of you, for those stories tonight. I hope we'll see some of those costumes out and about here in a few more days. So
I hope so too.
Just got a few more. I did want to turn some time over to both of you. I'll start with you, Rebecca. What is the Mormonish Podcast working on?
Ooh, we have a scary Halloween episode coming out on Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and it is about the fate of the mob, the Carthage mob, right? There's all kinds of rumors about what happened to the men who were involved in the mob. And there's one that's even buried near me. I went on a field trip to the grave site. So we have some amazing stories about these men who were involved in the martyrdom. And we have Ganesh, one of our favorite returning guests, Ganesh Sharian, who's going to be on with us. So it'll be really entertaining and probably informative too. There was a lot I didn't know and probably a lot you guys don't know either. And that's going to be on Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time.
Excellent. Radio Free Mormon, you just released an episode. Any thoughts on that or anything else you want to share that coming up, maybe mention Mormonism Live's episode as well?
Well, I tell you what, I've got something processing below because I had a picture that was related to a steeple, and I just wanted to share it with the audience. It's in a slideshow of a thing I haven't recorded yet, but it seemed apropos at the moment. So I'm waiting for that to work its way through.
Looks like it did show up. Is it at the very end?
Well, hang on a sec. Where is it?
Well, it should be. It should be this here.
No, that's us. That's what we're doing.
Well, yes, but that's the third one now. So it just showed up on the screen.
No, that was there from the beginning. The Mormon themed Halloween costumes.
Yeah, but I mean, well, like I have this one and then I have the other one, which is my screen that's been there from the beginning. So this just now popped up. Maybe you accidentally shared a different tab or something.
Oh, I have no idea.
It even says,
can you talk about Wednesday? Can you talk about Wednesday and I'll just see if this works at all? If it doesn't, then that's probably best.
Ooh,
yeah. So Wednesday, we're going to have a Mormonism Live Halloween special. We will share a few Halloween stories that have happened in our lives, and then we'll turn the majority of the time over to the followers of the show, the live viewers, and you guys can call in or join us live in studio and share with us some of the things that have happened to you over a lifetime in your experiences with Halloween. So should be a fun episode, should be a chance for us to hear some scary things, maybe some funny things, but everything having to do with the Dia de Muertos, right? Which is Day of the Dead, which is the Spanish version of Halloween, which we will not be celebrating. We'll do the English version, plain old Halloween.
Right. Technically, of course, I think the Day of the Dead is the same day at All Saints Day or All Hallows Day on November 1st, and Halloween being the night before, or the Eve, All Hallows Eve. That thing's not working out, so you'll have to wait to see it some other time, because for some reason it's getting mixed in with the current slides that we're showing. And so all it does when I try and process my slideshow, it comes up with tonight's slideshow. The mysteries of
technology.
StreamYard.
All right. Well, anything else from the two of you?
No, I think that's it. I just hope everybody has a really awesome, wonderful Halloween and have a lot of fun and be safe. And we'll see everybody next time, I guess. Huh?
Yeah. In celebration of Halloween coming up, who do you think is the scariest past church leader?
Oh,
That's prophet?
Joseph F. Smith.
Well, I don't have that one, so we'll just go with Elder Oaks.
Elder Dallin H.O. Oaks here. First, it's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. Second, we appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Third, keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. And finally, until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast. And cheers to all the feminists, homosexuals, and so-called intellectuals.